Hey guys, this is Liv with Live Life Outdoors with the Simple Life podcast. This is an adventure episode on finding hikes. And if you're new here, I'm kind of moving stuff over from Substack to YouTube so my subscribers can enjoy the outdoor adventure stuff that I do. This is the way that I like to deliver it most. I feel like I can have more like a conversational tone with you guys on my outdoor adventures and my tips and what those look like. So, talking about how to find hikes. So, if you are completely new to hiking, the app that I recommend is AllTrails. It shows you all the trails that are in your general area. I mean, you could look at other states too if you're planning on traveling, but it shows you what's in your general area. You can search by different forest locations, and then you can search by difficulty rating and kind of like what types of hikes you want to do. Now, on the difficulty rating, I do caution you to take that with a grain of salt. Some of the hikes end up being more difficult than they say, and some of them are easier than what they say. So I do recommend checking out the comments. Again, take it with a grain of salt because these are people's opinions, but they are opinions from people who have actually done the hikes themselves. So the things to look for are, was it rocky? Was it slippery? What kind of terrain was it? Do you need any special gear? Or is it your pretty average run-of-the-mill hike? So that's like take a few different of those comments and find an average, find a middle ground, because you're always going to have the person who is brand new to hiking, probably not that fit, and they're going to think that a hike is going to be more difficult than someone who is consistently hiking and this is what they do on a regular basis. That's two very extreme ends. So find something in the middle ground to try to determine how difficult a hike it is. One of my favorite features is the fact that it tells you the elevation gain over a certain distance. So that's something that as you do hikes, you'll find out that, so much elevation gain over so many miles is going to be either relatively flat or it's going to be pretty steep. So that's something to take into account because the steeper it's going to be, the more slippery situations you can get yourself into with falling rocks and actual slipperiness if it's been rainy lately. Plus, that is just a more strenuous exercise, right? Going uphill. And if you have asthma, that's something else to consider, or any other physically limiting aspects. And then back in the comments, you can also look for things like what was the temperature around the time that you're planning on going, so you can plan on the right clothes. It used to, anyways, I haven't looked recently. It used to have the local weather for that area, so that's pretty handy. You can see whether or not it's going to rain or anything like that. And then if you are, say, in an arid location where you're wanting to go do a water hike it doesn't always have water, you can check out the comments, see if anyone's been recently and said, yeah, there's water running right now. Or if there's no recent comments, you can check back a year ago from the same time frame and see if there happened to be water running. Doesn't guarantee that there will be, but there's a higher chance if it's at the same time of year. So those are some neat things that you can pull out of the comments there and help you make a decision on what hikes you want to do. Also, another thing in the comments, look for parking. How early do you need to get there in order to snag a spot, because it is a trail, so it's going to have more people than a backcountry hike would. And also check for comments on what the road is like. Now, I highly caution you at this point, because if you see someone that's like, oh, it's a pretty rough road, but I got my sedan down it just fine, do not take your sedan down that road. They did something they should not, and you may get yourself stuck. So if you see any comments like that, pretty rough road, but got my sedan down it, you probably need high clearance at the very least, if not four-wheel drive. You don't need four-wheel drive for everything, but you should definitely be cautious on that aspect because people will do things that they just shouldn't. So that's one of them. Now, when you pick a hike and you get out there, take note of what the terrain looks like. Take note of where waterfalls are. If your map is working, pin that if you can as you go along. Pin, there's a waterfall here. There's a waterfall up there. There's a wide open space over here. And the reason for that is when you go back home, you can look at Google Maps on satellite view and you can actually learn what a waterfall looks like on satellite because it's a very distinctive feature. And having that knowledge of like open areas, it just gives you the idea of like where you were in general, especially if you can't be pinning as you go along. You may have to just like screenshot that general area and then try to match it on the map. So if there's specific geographical features on there, you definitely want to capture those if possible. But that is how I ended up finding all my hikes in Arizona. I ditched AllTrails because when you do that, when you're finding trails on AllTrails, they're trails. They're going to have people and they're going to be a lot of them, especially in a place where water is scarce. So if you want to do water hikes specifically, like I did, you're going to be fighting everyone for that same spot because it's hard to get to. You know, like the harder the things are to get to, the less likely there's going to be people there. But the things that are simple, like pull up, park, and you get to walk up to a creek, those are going to be jam-packed with people. So eventually I ditched AllTrails when I had more experience, and I only used Google Maps satellite to find my hiking trails, or not my hiking trails, but like backcountry hiking. That is the majority of what I did in Arizona. Now, that is very, very different living in Pennsylvania because I have a tree line hiding everything, right? The luscious green trees are absolutely phenomenal, but they do cover what you would be able to see on satellite in Arizona comparatively. So in Arizona, I can go pick out where the creek is. I can pick out where the waterfalls are. I can also note where a creek bed might be, even if it's not showing water on the map, because that's where the trees happen to be the most green on the map, whereas everything is just brown. So when you move into states that are heavy tree coverage, you're going to lose that sight. So what do you do in that case? I went to fall back on AllTrails a bit as I got to learn the area some more, and then go into different hiking forums, Facebook groups, YouTube, see who's local and doing stuff around the state that you're in. That is another great way to find different hikes. Also, you know, the paper maps that they sell for hiking, those are fabulous too. I just haven't had those in my budget, or I forget when I do have room in my budget to purchase them. They do have a lot of things listed out on those maps for specifics for you, like which trails are open only to ATVs, which ones are only foot traffic. And also, they're great for getting around in areas where you don't have cell service because you're not going to be able to see that on your map unless you've already downloaded it offline. So that would be super handy. Another thing you can utilize is called Strava. So Strava used to be FatMap. I'm a little bit upset about this one because you do have to pay for Strava. So I've not really messed around with that myself. But FatMap was a free use topographical map. So you could turn the map to like a 2D/3D view so you can see where the elevation points are, which is great for not only telling how steep something is, but like in Arizona, for example, one of the creeks that does run year round, it only has maybe 4 entry points into the canyon. Otherwise, you're just like scrambling down the side of a very steep and dangerous ravine. So being able to see where you can come in at on that topographical map is really helpful. So that's Strava, but it is paid. I don't know if there's anything free use in comparison to that one. You would have to go research that yourself. And then like a couple bonus things are, I think it's Flow Alert. That one's great if you're trying to find places to hike where you're counting on monsoon season. So like I said, a lot of places water doesn't run consistently in Arizona because it's scarce, right? And same thing's going to be true for Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, the drier states. You can pick out wherever actually has the meters, like they have water meters in certain canyons, and that's going to tell you whether or not water is flowing. You can tell by the rate of the water. So that's handy for hiking, but also, obviously, it's handy for kayaking as well. It's a multi-state thing, so you can just pull in whichever creeks have gauges that you want to go check out to see what the flow rate is. That's important in arid climates because, for example, the Salt River, they actually let water out of the reservoirs, and that's how you get to kayak the Salt River in Arizona. You need to know what the flow rate is because if it is too low, if you have a kayak with a fin on it, it's going to catch. And then if it's just too low in general, you're not going to be able to kayak, period. So that's a good one to know. That's also handy for places where maybe it rains a lot and it would be dangerous to have a super high flow rate. That's something that you could consider using that for. And then on the kayaking aspect as well, I think it's called Go Paddle. That one tells you where you can put in and put out. So where you can put in your kayak and take out. So you can do drop-off points. You leave you take 2 vehicles. You drive up to one, leave it, you both get in the vehicle, drive to the other spot, and then you float down to the vehicle that you left. So that's a handy one as well. But that's how I have found my different places to hike. There's no one right way to do it. You can piece things together depending on where you are. And also just keep in mind if you're trying to utilize it for, say, camping as well, there's a difference between national forests and state forests. And state game lands, they all have different rules. So make sure you are looking up those rules. And they're even going to vary state to state as well, with different places that are either must reserve the spot or they're off limits in certain areas. So always check that. Always check to see what the fire risk is, because we don't want to be hiking in areas that are super high risk if it's, say, like extra windy, extra dry, and there's a fire warning. That's not the greatest time to go hike, right? So just kind of accumulate all your information together. It seems like a lot, but once you really get into it and start hiking and start finding these things, you'll just kind of get into a groove of understanding what you're looking for, and it'll become easier. And by that time, you'll have so many pins saved on your map that you'll have tons of places to go check out. I do recommend that. Pin the places you want to go. If you're sitting there on a map for an hour one night looking around for hikes, keep dropping pins. Just drop pins on the places you want to go explore, and then that way, if you don't have an idea, you just pick one of those random pins, look up the area, see what gear you need, what climate it is, and go do that hike. And then what I do when I do that is I go back and I change it to a heart, because you can change it to like a favorite. And that says, that's a place I've been. And it's kind of cool once you do that to see across the map the places that you've actually explored. And it also gives you like an idea, okay, I really liked that hike. I would love to go back and do more in that area. Or this hike over here, I'm going to add a little note to it because that wasn't my favorite place to go, or it was too hard to get there. You can add little notes on your flags where you drop pins. So that's a pretty handy feature, and that's just on Google, and it's saved to your account. So make sure you're logged in with your Google account, and it'll save all that for you. All right, guys, that is it for this one, and I will see you in the next episode.